gathered together from the cosmic reaches of the universe. Here, in this great hall of the Signal Watch, are the most powerful forces of good ever assembled. Join us as we discuss all manner of topics across the multiverse of comic books, history, creators, storylines, movies, and more. The Signal Watch podcast presents Kryptonian Thought Beast, a comics podcast series dedicated to truth, justice, and peace for all mankind.
Hi everybody, and welcome back to the Signal Watch, where we're doing our ongoing new series about comic books and all sorts of comic book related things. We're calling it Kryptonian Thought Beast. And with me today is...
Well, hello, I'm Brandon Zuern. I work at Austin Books and Comics, Guzu Gallery, and Outlaw Moon Games and Toys, what we call the center of Austin fandom.
And we're actually recording today at Outlaw.
That's right. It's after hours. We actually just finished our big sale. Sorry you missed it if you did. But it's a nice open space with chairs. Comfortable chairs, too.
It is. If you're ever down this way, you're in Austin, or you're down in the Lamar and 51st Street area, make sure you drop on by. The main comic shop next door is about how many square feet?
6,000 square feet. Some of that is unseen storage space, but Ryan can attest to it being walls and walls and walls of comics.
It is, and one day I'd like to be let loose to dig through those back issues. So, in addition, you do have this space we're in, which sells gaming materials of all sorts of games, as well as vintage toys, as I'm looking around looking at all of these things.
When we opened the store, or when we were planning on opening a store, I couldn't decide between games or vintage toys, so we literally divided it in half. We do half games, Magic, Dungeons & Dragons, tabletop games, and also vintage toys. So with a strong specialization in 70s through 80s, so you got Star Wars, Masters of the Universe, G.I. Joe, I guess they were called Superpowers for DC, and Secret Wars for Marvel. The toys I grew up with, but I would be very interested in 50s cowboy stuff as well, or 90s Turtles and Food Fighters, and the really weird ones that no one remembers.
So yeah, if you're looking to unload your collection, Brandon's your man, I guess.
Or add to yours. I buy and sell.
Yeah, I'm actually looking at some vintage Barbies here as I look over my left shoulder.
You're not. You're looking at vintage Gem and the Holograms dolls.
What?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I'll be dropping some coin then before I walk out the door. And Guzu Gallery, I've tried to describe it before. It's very difficult for me, so...
So it's our designer toy and screen print art galleries, what we focus on over there. We do a lot of blind box toys and cool, really unique gifts, interesting art. Vince has made that place. You often think of like a wine and cheese gallery. He refers to that as a beer gallery. So we have very pop culture related stuff. We do art shows based off of kaiju, horror, different themes, music themes, just movie themes, cool stuff. We did a fantasy one recently, but you'll see like a lot of familiar characters done by local and national artists.
Yeah, I've seen, I think, Dan Brereton, if that's how you pronounce it.
He's been in a lot of our shows, actually. He's always in
always
something.
Blows my mind to walk in and see a new piece by him in here. So, we're going to talk a little bit. I figured for this first one, we talk a bit about your journey through comics and how you wound up as the king of Austin Books. I do want to mention one more thing about Austin Books, the comic shop proper, is a lot of shops these days are mostly just focusing on newer comics. Austin Books has amazing showcase comics, as well as, I don't know, maybe 2,500 square feet, 2,000 square feet, maybe dedicated just to the back issues.
Probably close to 2,000.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
With lots of drawers you can pull out and kind of dig through.
And they've been ravaged all weekend long because once a year for our anniversary, we do half off those back issues, and there's just constantly people digging through them. What's interesting is like the busiest day of the sale, Saturday, is like the one day where those drawers get a bit of a break because it's a more casual customer that's coming in. So it's really weird to see them like Thursday night, all day Friday, just haunted constantly by back issue fans. And then Saturday, people are kind of milling about more the graphic novels and the toys and posters and that stuff. Which is a weird thing to observe, but is absolutely something I looked at this year, and I went, huh. And then Sunday's right back-to-back issues, and Monday, too, so it's...
Yeah, I mean, I showed up 30 minutes before close, and, I mean, I was back there, and there were other people still kind of milling around doing their digging. So I'd already done some digging on Friday after work, so I got my stack of Lois and Superman and action and adventure and whatnot. So Austin Books has actually been my local comic shop since about, I would guess, about 1986. Whenever I first looked into a comic book and saw there was such a thing as a specialty comic shop, there was one at the time on the Drag, but I was like, that looks complicated going to campus. And so I went to the Yellow Pages and I was like, Austin Books is first.
The genius of our name.
Yes. So I came down here, and at the time, Austin Books was much smaller, and half of it was, even back then you guys were really big on back issues, but half of it was fantasy and sci-fi and movie posters on the left-hand side of the store as you walked in. But anyway, this has just been my shop. I am down here about twice a month, and I buy lots of back issues as well as new stuff. So
I show him something cool that I just bought. His eyes turn into stars. It's very fun.
Yeah, I've been told I was the biggest Superman fan at Austin Books, which I found alarming.
You're the first guy I think of. I mean, you're always wearing a Superman shirt.
Yeah, even as we speak, yeah.
You probably have more of the Superman first appearances or Superman family first appearances than anyone else I know.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Fair enough.
You're the guy.
So your journey into comics, your journey into mystery, began... you were living in Ohio as a youth. We'll start there.
I grew up in Ohio. A small town in Ohio where there's not a whole lot to do. So anything to capture our attention was absolutely welcome. I wasn't that good at sports, so comics were a welcome diversion. That was basically what was used by my parents to, I don't know, get me to shut up at a grocery store. Here, look at the comics. And then they could just shop freely and happily and not be bothered about anything, because I would absolutely plop down and read Mad, Spidey, whatever I get my hands on, and know that I'd get to go home with one of them. So I decided, I was using the store time to decide which one I wanted to keep and read. Mm-hmm. And yeah, it just became, a thing. So
what were the first comics that you really latched onto, that you thought about actually, like, I need to get the next one?
Wow. So as far as like really became like a habitual reader, it would have been 1987. It was the Kraven's Last Hunt storyline. It's a pretty intense one to start off with.
Well, what's interesting, I'm a little bit older than you, but similar. I was on a family vacation, and we were driving across the U.S., and my parents kept having to stop at B. Dalton's so I could go through the spinner rack and look for the next issue, because I figured out they were coming out every week.
Well, and that's the thing, because the stories were usually self-contained. I mean, obviously there was a thread running through Spider-Man from the beginning until today, but you could get a whole full story. But because I start off with the fourth part of that Kraven's Last Hunt, because Black Costume Spider-Man was crawling out of his grave, and that just blew my mind. So I picked that up, loved the cover, didn't know what the heck was going on. That thing starts off with like a dream sequence, And it's a bizarre one, too.
Yeah.
Especially if you have no idea about any... It's like, who the hell's Ned Leeds? I don't know who that guy is. So I tracked down immediately 2 and 3, and then haunted basically the deli, the pharmacy, and some other location. Not the bookstore, because I didn't wise up to that yet. But another lesser-known place to get a comic, because you could do that back then, for 5 and 6. And you needed that full story. I actually didn't find one until like 7-8 years later.
Oh my god!
Yeah, it was killing me. And I found it at a baseball card show of all places. Like, one person there had a box of comics. I was like, oh, I'll flip through these because I don't care about... I mean, I kind of like sports cards, but whatever. And there I was, just sitting there like, oh my god! And I did not have the money for it, so I just begged my cousin, like, dude, lend me like $3 so I can get this thing. I need it.
Yeah, $3. Wow.
Well, it was an $8 comic, so it was actually kind of pricey. I had the $5.
$8 would have been back then would have been quite a bit.
Kind of a rip off for at the time, but I had to have it.
Sure.
So yeah.
So you mentioned a little bit about like hunting down comics, and I think for depending on when you got into comics, you may just assume comic shops were always a thing. I myself. I came to Austin Books when I had money to do so as a kid. When I say I started coming here in like 86, I'd say I came here like maybe 4 times a year at first until my brother got his driver's license. And he was just looking for reasons to tool around town. But yeah, back then for me it was the grocery store. It was a little convenience store across the way. Places, and then of course the mall had 2 bookstores, and they always had a spinner rack of something. But
my favorite was Marvin's Deli, because my parents would go there about once a week, and it was in the middle of downtown Tiffin, Ohio, where I'm from. And the back wall had basically a 6-foot by 4-foot waterfall rack.
Nice.
With mostly comics and Mads, and it was just, it was all like Marvel DC stuff, but that's all I needed at that time. Mm-hmm. Down the street a ways is a bookstore called Paper and Ink, and when I finally had the revelation from my best friend Brad, sent me, or we both went there. And this is a big deal, being able to walk across my town instead of leaving the neighborhood. So we walked there, and I saw that they had basically a medium-sized comic box full of new releases. And that became a weekly habit from then on.
Oh wow, weekly already then?
Yes. I mean, okay. Once I saw that I would have more access to that stuff, and they had old trade paperbacks, so they had kind of cool premium things to buy. And at that time, a trade paperback was a premium thing. That was not a casual release. It was always going to be Dark Knight Returns, Year One, or the Turtles collections that were out from First Comics at the time.
Yeah.
So I found a place that I could regularly get the comics I wanted, and quickly built a rapport with the folks that worked there. I was a hustler as a 10-year-old who really wanted to get those comics. So.
That's awesome. And so that was pretty much your outlet until about what age then?
So I moved here. I mean, that was basically my place to get comics. I would also hang out at my older cousin's house and read his stacks of everything. I mean, basically he was able to get what I wasn't able to get from the bookshop. So he had Gru, just anything from Epic Comics was a part of that collection. The original Mirage Turtles, long before there was the Archie stuff. And I eventually found his stack of heavy metals, and that was a revelation. Let me tell you, comics can have boobs too. Awesome.
What do you think back then when you were looking at comics? Were you into the stories? Were you looking at the art? Because I hear different things from different people.
It's the whole medium. I applaud my youthful self for appreciating the writing, appreciating the art. I I can tell you that the first two artists I recognized their work immediately was Jack Davis from Mad and from a lot of the horror stuff, and then Bernie Wrightson.
Okay.
Those two guys, I just started to spot their work immediately, and then that became like, okay, how about this artist? And then, as I was getting deeper and deeper into comics, that's when you had the rise of McFarlane, Liefeld, Jim Lee, the big 90s guys. But I never dove too deeply into that stuff because I didn't think the writing was as good. I would save up and buy whatever old comic I could find. So if I can get my hands on a Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams Batman, that was the best of both worlds. Excellent writing, beautiful art, mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And it made me appreciate like the best of comics. But, I can, I'll take any comic and read it. It's always worth the 20 minutes or so it takes.
So were you finding that stuff on your own, or was somebody kind of like, you need to check out the O'Neill stuff?
I mean, I'd bounce. So I had the two Brads, my neighbor Brad Fisk, and my cousin Brad Simpkins. And we would separately, I would, read his comics and he'd read mine, and we'd bounce off what we liked, what we didn't like, and then I'd go hang out with my cousin, we'd do the same. So there wasn't, Comic Buyer's Guide started coming out, and I would occasionally be able to get my hands on one of those so I could read like critical examinations of some of this stuff. But this is before Wizard, so
right.
When Wizard came out, that was great, and I would get that religiously because it was people writing about comics. And Wizard was a little bit more interesting than a lot of the comics that were coming out at the time, so Wizard was kind of essential. But it also, clued me into like really cool things I would not have known about. Like I never got my hands on Strike Force Morituri, but they did a little feature about it. I'm like, oh, this is rad.
Yeah. I remember there was a magazine at the time called Comic Scene, and that's how I started checking out The Question.
And I absolutely would have been into that magazine if anyone in my rinky-dink town had ordered that.
It was at the B. Dalton at the mall, and it was if I don't get these two comics, I can get this one magazine that'll tell me about everything, and they're telling me about all the movies that are in pre-production.
I've gone back and looked at those and Amazing Heroes and like all the great like comic media of like the 80s and 90s and thought, man, these are so good. I would have been clued into way better stuff that I wouldn't have gotten out of comics for a little while, so because I always would have been something good.
So talk about that a little bit, because I think a lot of people go through that phase at some point.
Girls, you get to be 16 and the comics are less attractive than the girls you're going to school with, and at the time, this is a different time now, having comics was a bit of an albatross situation. You have comics, you're not going to get a girlfriend. That's different now.
Yeah.
Now if you don't read comics, you don't have a
kids.
girlfriend.
Yeah.
So I envy our comic fans of today because it's a wider, diverse pool of fans. And I love that. I appreciate it. I respect it. And I hope everyone gets into comics. And anyone who's a gatekeeper needs smacked in the mouth. Don't keep comics away from anyone. Everyone should enjoy comics.
Yeah, it's been interesting, and this is jumping way ahead, maybe fodder for an episode on its own, but one of the first times I ever came here, I didn't not expect it to be all dudes, but it was all dudes. And all ages and different kinds of dudes, but dudes. I think there was one woman who worked here at the time. And then when we moved back, there were already women. That was in 2006. There were already women in the store, and just the change, even in the past 13 years, as to the percentages. Women, always were coming in by themselves since we came back. It wasn't, the girlfriend kind of trailing or whatever,
drug along.
Yeah, looking unhappy.
That was the next big revelation. When I started coming here around 2000, 2001. I would be shopping for comics, and then I would see girls shopping for comics, and I thought, what is this? I did not know this was possible. Does she like comics too, really? And then like eventually working here, it just becomes so, it was, everyone comes in here and buys comics. It's mind-blowing, the diversity of comic fans when you look for it, and it's at this point, like I am surprised by no one anymore. You know, it went from being like utter shock and awe to, of course, this person likes comics. Who doesn't?
Yeah, and you've had. I mean, I know this is jumping way ahead, but you've had like celebrities and stuff in the store, and
I've every celebrity I've met is pretty much because they came here. There's a lot of pretty cool stories. I was talking a little bit about Martin Starr came in earlier, who now people know him as the Spider-Man's teacher, but he was, you know, Freaks and Geeks and Guilfoyle on Silicon Valley. Patton Oswalt came in and called us one of his favorite places to go when he's traveling, and that was just a huge thing to get to chat with him about some comics. Robert Rodriguez, whenever he's in town, pretty much comes in, buys manga for his kids. I got to ring up Frank Miller once. That was super cool. I mean, that's if you're a comic fan mostly, but that was wild, and you know, that was when they were making Sin City, and I mean when they were making Sin City here in town, just so many people dropped in. Benicio del Toro,
oh crazy,
you know, Guillermo del Toro's come in a few times. He gave me a hug the last time he came in. It was awesome. This is the store where he first bought Hellboy.
Oh, that's nuts.
Yeah. So we introduced him to Hellboy, or at least he bought it here. And he gifted us with like a Hellboy print when he was like making the movie. It was pretty cool.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I think Brad has that somewhere at his place. Yeah, it used to be on display here, but I think he took that home. Brad is the store owner, so he has that right and is totally welcome to do so. He can pretty much take whatever he wants home. We sold Walking Dead, he first saw Walking Dead. Greg Nicotero first saw it here in the store because he would always be here, like working on Sin City and other movies.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's probably during Sin City he first spotted it and said, "What's this?" And now he basically brought Walking Dead to life on the screen. He doesn't remember it, but Michael Cera absolutely discovered Scott Pilgrim here because Jonah Hill pushed it on him.
Jonah Hill was in the store with...
They were both here together promoting Superbad about 6 months before it came out. And I'm freaking out because George Michael from Arrested Development's coming in, and Jonah Hill from Grandma's Boy, which is a hilarious movie with absolutely zero plot, but it's so fun. And he's a bit part in that, so I recognized him, but I didn't know he would be as awesome as he would eventually become, because this was pre-Superbad. And Jonah Hill runs up to me and says, "Do you have Scott Pilgrim?" I'm like, "Yes, absolutely," because like Scott Pilgrim was fairly new at the time. I think they were just a couple volumes in, and it was like the hot book at the store.
Okay.
So I ran off with him and grabbed it, and he takes it from me and he puts it in Michael Cera's hand, like, "You need to read this. This is so good." And the three of us all take a picture with it because I'm very excited to be like hanging out with these two. I could still find that picture online. But then, like a few months later, Sarah would be announced to be playing Scott Pilgrim, and I just flipped out. So that was super.
Yeah, that's nuts.
He remembers it differently because he was on the radio here when the movie came out, and he swears some friend gave it to him. But I know that's not true because, I mean, yes, a friend did put it in his hand.
Yeah.
It was Jonah Hill. It was here. I remember it. Come on.
Yeah. Well,
I did sell Brandon.
We know
Routh.
the truth.
I sold Brandon Routh the 6th volume of. Actually, I gave Brandon Routh the 6th volume of Scott Pilgrim, so he got that from me.
At the store? Or?
No, we were set up at the Alamo Draft House.
I was going to say because I remember you guys had that screening.
They had the premiere, and like the entire cast was there. So there's me with a table of South Scott Pilgrim books, watching the entire cast of that movie, except for Chris Evans. I don't think he was there, but everyone else was there. And I'm just geeking out because I love everyone in that movie. They're walking by, and Brandon has gives a good look at the table, and then after they all go in, a gentleman comes out and says, "Mr. Routh would like to know if he could get one of those Volume 6s." I said, would Mr. Routh be willing to come out and take a photo with me? I would absolutely love to give him one of those Volume 6s. And he did. He was super cool. And the whole time I'm thinking, you are Superman. You are absolutely Superman. You are built like him. You look like him. Perfect casting.
And he'll be back in Crisis on Infinite Earths playing Superman.
Super stoked about that. Man, those TV shows, DC is doing that really well, I think.
They really are.
That is like real close to Marvel movie level of fan love.
Yeah.
In those TV shows.
Don't call it fan service, man.
I wasn't. That's a whole different thing.
So I took us way off track. But so you're in Ohio.
Yeah.
And you're only able to go to a deli and the store that has one long box of new issues. But somehow you've persevered.
I mean, I was a dedicated comic fan for most of my existence in Ohio. The last couple of years, not so much. But I was still frequenting the shop because I would buy Magic cards. I'd be playing D&D and doing that kind of thing. Still a gamer, and I would occasionally pick up a comic, but it just wasn't capturing my attention like it was. It was the mid-'90s. It was kind of it was the mid-'90s, and I didn't have access to the Vertigo books.
Right.
Let me throw that in there.
Yeah, so Vertigo absolutely kept me in comics. I'm not going to lie. Like, I had been reading X-Men. Batman was doing things I wasn't that... I would look at things like Death of Superman. I wasn't reading Superman at the time, but I'd look at Death of Superman and go, well, he's going to come back, so who cares?
Yeah.
The Broken Bat stuff was a little bit after this, but, you know...
Well, I mean, that just seemed like, oh, you're just going to do this every year now, right? So you're just going to, like...
Green Lantern will probably get killed next year.
And he did.
And he did. So, yeah, I just was kind of like, and I didn't really like some of what was going on with X-Men anymore. They'd gone too far from what I liked about it with Claremont. And then I walked into a store and there was like Animal Man, and there was, Doom Patrol had gone completely crazy, and Sandman was out, and this is all pre-Vertigo. This is like months before they branded all of this stuff Vertigo.
Helix.
Was that what they were calling it?
That was what they were right before. It was
Okay.
like a sort of like sci-fi sort of imprint. And most of that stuff eventually just became Vertigo.
Yeah. I mean, I can't say enough good things. One day I want to do an episode just about, I'll just keep saying Karen Berger's amazing over and over and over. But I think for a lot of us, she kind of saved us, or saved our comics fandom, or kept us in comics.
I got to have dinner with her.
Oh, God damn it.
I should have mentioned that before at some point. So it was a DC retailer meeting, which they would do like every couple of years. And so all the retailers were basically assigned a DC editor or person to have dinner with. And just kind of shoot the breeze, talk about stuff. And I was very excited to be sitting at Karen Berger's table.
Yeah.
And just, she was asking questions, and we were answering, and we would ask questions. And one of the questions I asked her was like, Flex Mentalo trade?
Yeah.
I could sell that so well. And she says, that would really sell well? Absolutely.
Well, I know in Austin, Texas, absolutely. I'd be curious about the rest of the country, but...
Yeah, I mean, we sort of have this sweet microcosm of, like, lots of comic fans that have, like, really distinct and diverse taste in comics. But I knew I could sell that. I could sell that book to anyone. I'm like... And it's such a weird book to sell to anyone, because it's Grant Morrison on a lot of drugs, appreciating comics. But yeah. When that hardcover came out, I couldn't help but feel like I did this. Not Grant Morrison or Frank Quiley. I did this.
Well, I appreciate it. I was very glad to finally have that in my hands. Thank you, Brandon.
I didn't do it, but I did mention it to her.
Yeah, and
I was very, very happy to see it.
Yeah, we probably should do a whole Karen, because I have a whole thing I want to go off about her new stuff too. So that I've been picking up here from time to time. But so you get through that period, and then this is the period of also, like, you'd already mentioned you weren't too much into the Image books, I guess, and
yeah, I mean, I read them because, I mean, who didn't?
Me.
I did skip Youngblood completely. I'm sorry. I read the first 20 issues of Spawn because I did appreciate McFarlane a lot. I looked at Wildcats a little bit, and like, that's a lot like X-Men. But I wasn't... The Max was my favorite.
Yeah.
I love Sam Keith.
Yeah.
He was doing something completely different from any of the others. And really what Marvel or DC was doing. His very unique voice. So I was crazy about the Max. And then they made a cartoon of it, and that was even awesome. And so, yeah, I mean, I liked a little bit of that, but I was pretty much veering away from comics because Spider-Man was a clone. The X-Men were... Wolverine didn't have a left hand. It was just... I wasn't into it.
So, at what point did you... What got you back?
Okay, so I was living here in Texas. It's around 2000. And my cousin Brad, who we used to always read comics and trade thoughts and books with each other, he called me up and we're talking. And in the conversation he says, "Are you reading comics anymore?" I'm like, "No, man. No, there's nothing good there." It's like, you're wrong. There's this awesome comic by this bald guy named Brian from Cleveland. I'm like, okay. He says it's called Powers. And it's like, really cool detective superhero comic. I'm like, all right. And that is actually also what brought me to Austin Books and Comics, because I'll check that out. And I came in to buy that, and I was here for hours my first visit, because whether or not I was into comics at the time, I was now in a comic book wonderland. And this is when the store was half as big as it is now. And they had access to back issues, and it was much more difficult access. You had to lug down these boxes. They were all stacked 3 high, long boxes, flip through them all, and I absolutely did that. I went crazy. But I went home with Powers specifically. But I was looking at everything because it was still the stuff that I spent years loving. Take Powers home, read it, don't even stop until it's done. It was like volume 1.
Yeah.
They had just released the trade, so it was very good timing. Next week, talk to him. Dude, Powers was great. And he says, yeah, so there's this bald guy named Brian from Cleveland. I'm like, yeah, you already told me about it. I was like, no, this is Brian K. Vaughan. And he's writing, no, not Brian K. Vaughan. It was Brian Azzarello.
Oh no, there's 3 bald Brians.
Which is awesome, yes! Now, the Brian Vaughan we didn't discover till after I was already deeply into it, and because Azzarello, he told me about 100 Bullets, and I lost my mind over that. And just the writing is just so adult and HBO and awesome, and he just gets every kind of voice right, and the art is just mind-blowing. Just wherever Azzarello or Riso would put you inside a pinball machine, and you don't even realize it right away, or you just thought these insane points of view that you can only get in a comic book. You cannot get in a movie. So I lost my mind for 100 Bullets, and at that point I was just back in where I would discover a third bald Brian from Cleveland, Brian K. Vaughan.
I didn't find him until Ex Machina, I guess.
Really? You missed Why the Last Man?
Oh, was that the order?
Why the Last Man was first.
Okay, then I read Why the Last Man. Okay, yeah.
Because we were pushing that hard, and this is before I was working here. I was just a customer, but they said as soon as I walked in, like, get Why the Last Man. I'm like, okay, because the first issue had just come out, and I did, and boom, so good.
Yeah, that was one of the books that I think I was on like issue 10 or 12, and I quit buying the floppies. I was like, I'm going to want the trades to keep on my shelf forever, and they are putting them out as Vertigo did so well.
Yeah,
like right on time. Yeah. So yeah, I still have my little stack of thin Y trades, but I did also read Ex Machina and some of this other stuff. So then you're back, and so
just full force too.
Yeah,
I went from comics aren't good anymore to just having a $100 a week habit. Maybe not that much, but it was a lot. I was spending a lot on comics. It was my main source of entertainment at that point.
But you weren't working here.
No. I was just a fanboy returned, and I was, and Wizard was still coming out, so I picked up a Wizard, and I would see, check out the Indie Spotlight, which was definitely the best part of Wizard at that time. Most of it was, but it turned me on to 30 Days a Night. Okay. There was this is a comic that I thought like more people appreciated, but actually no one really knows about. It was called Teenagers from Mars.
I've never heard of it.
I absolutely love it. It was like, it's so indie, it's so cool. It's about this guy who works at a Walmart like place of business, and he quits and gets in a fight and just trying to defend. He makes his own comics. It's a very late 90s, early 2000s kind of thing, but I just loved it. So yeah, it was just one of those many things that just got me right back, and I was just picking up anything that even looked remotely cool. I did eventually learn, okay, there's certain miniseries where I'm just 4 issues in, I don't like it, I could probably stop. So I did learn some discretion and learn to step away from something I'm not enjoying, and I could just spend that $3 to $4 on something a little bit better.
So this is, I'm realizing I've never actually talked to you that much. We talk a lot about the fact of what I collect is, Superman, Supergirl, Lois, all that good stuff. But did you get into actually collecting back into collecting at this point? I don't even know if you have collections that you're really focusing on right now.
I am absolutely a collector. It is, however, I'm a very widespread collector, so I don't collect like a certain title. If I would, I'd collect Amazing Spider-Man, which is the dumbest because it's probably one of the most expensive collections to put together. But so like every aspect of all these stores, I collect something from it, if not a few somethings. I collect bad guy Decepticons from Transformers. Certain Star Wars stuff. It's usually bad guy related. I have a villain thing. I've got a really awesome Skeletor from Masters of the Universe. Comics, I will buy. I love Silver and Bronze. I can barely afford any of that stuff, but I've got a really nice first appearance of Ghost Rider from Marvel Spotlight 5. I did have an Avengers 1. I did sell it eventually, which funded basically a whole trip to California, which was nice. But I do Silver Age Doom Patrol. I've got most of those.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love nice hardcover reproductions of stuff I cannot afford to collect, like especially like the Carl Barks, Donald Duck stuff, and Uncle Scrooge stuff, and Don Rosa's Duck stuff, the EC collections both versions of those I love. I love the Dark Horse color ones, and then the Fantagraphics black and white ones are great. So I got bookshelf stuff. I've got lots of comic boxes full of, and with comics, I mostly, besides the stuff I'm just reading at the time, bizarre things. I like really weird things. If you ever come across, what's it called, New York Underground or something like that, I forgot the name of it. It's this really low budget, mostly unknown comic from the New York area. It's very much like a Benjamin Marra kind of thing. I think he's actually the guy who told me about it originally.
Okay. And
it's very early 80s New York punks and vigilantes. I mean, like what was that vigilante group in New York at the time?
The Angels, the Guardian Angels?
Guardian Angels, yeah. Red Caps. So it sort of has like that kind of feel, but it's also a little bit more warriors than that. Crazy comic. Just like the most bizarre dialogue and art, and I love it. And you could see like the Benjamin Marra, what he would take the influence from for that too. But
I really literally thought you were going to start talking about you have a copy of Knights of Terror or something, and I was going to be like,
what's Knights of Terror?
That's the Joe Shuster drawn.
Oh,
you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
No, I don't. No, I don't have anything drawn by Joe Shuster. Can't afford that.
Yeah.
Weird things. I mean, like the Madballs Star comics from the 80s.
Really?
I have some of that. I like
that is an ongoing joke between me and one of my friends who lives in the Carolinas. Is he's always like, I think he asked if I was going to ever do a podcast about Madballs. I'm always like, why are you always on about Madballs?
That's like one of my favorite toys ever. I don't actually have. I had Hornhead as a kid, and maybe a couple others, but like, I don't have any of the originals. Yeah. I do still have my copy of Care Bears number 13, featuring a crossover between the Care Bears and the Madballs. Actually, that was probably my sister's copy that I absolutely booted from her. She read it. She's done with it. This is going in my collection.
Well, yeah. So I'm sure my brother actually waited before just declaring some of my stuff his. So at least you gave her a fair shot at
She
it.
got the read.
Yeah.
She got to keep the Archie stuff. I didn't keep that. I did read it. I was so desperate for any kind of comics to read. I would absolutely read her Archie stuff, which is mostly what she ended up getting. But I think she mostly got those just because I got something.
Yeah.
That whole parental keep it even.
Right.
I weird stuff. I mean, of course, I play Magic and D&D, so I've got a bunch of that stuff, and I've got a lot of the designer toys and tons of screen prints from Guzu. So, these stores, are things I'm interested in. So I collect. Basically, I spend 6 out of 7 days a week in a collector's heaven, and so it's hard not to have those kinds of collections.
Yeah, I mean, even if you were impulse buying only once in a while, you're just here.
You caught me buying at the sale earlier, and this is like my 15th sale that I've done, and I will always find something that I want.
What did you get?
I got from the half-off trades in our part of our Sidekick Sidewalk sale. There was the little black and white digest size collection of Vampire Tales.
Okay.
The Marvel horror magazine of the 70s.
Oh.
And it features like the first appearance of Satana and Morbius. Not his first appearance, but like it's got Morbius is in it.
Yeah.
I got that, and then there was, despite having probably most of the issues and the little thinner collections they did at the time, they did a collection of Twisted Toy Fair Theater.
Oh,
yeah,
I remember that.
Like a 10th anniversary collection, and it's like I have all this stuff. Probably, I'm still going to buy this just so I can have it all in one place.
Sure, yeah.
And I was like, well, half off, why not?
Yeah. So you were coming into the store, and then at some point, Brad was just like, you're here so much, you should manage it.
It didn't quite work out like that. I was coming in the store so much, didn't like my job. I said, hey, are you guys hiring? I would love to work here. He took one look at the stack I was buying. At the time of asking, he says, you couldn't afford to work here. Like, oh, okay. That's fair. Thanks. Months later, or a month or a couple later, we were doing 24-hour Comic Book Day, which is this really neat event where creators would show up. They had 24 hours to write, draw, create a 24-page comic by themselves. So everyone did their own comic. And we had like the world's largest collection of creators doing it. Like we broke their record. It was like the first or maybe second year they did it. Mm-hmm. The first year they did it like nationally as a big thing. And we had the most of anyone, which was really cool. And I was making a comic, and I basically wrote and drew myself as an employee of the store because that's really all I knew at the time. Everything else was crappy job, go home, play video games, and then the store. Because I would be here most any day I could be, just hanging out. Mm-hmm. And like even that night, I was finishing up my comic, or I had just finished it, and all the employees were super tired, and I think Brad needed to go somewhere. The store owner once again, and he says, "Can you watch the front for like a minute? I don't know how to run the register or anything." He's like, "Yeah, just hang out here for a minute. I'll be right back." I'm like, yes, I have the ship. I can do this. And then like a month later, he shot me an email saying, "Hey, you want to work at the store?" Absolutely. Let me quit this awful job and make more money at. But I'm absolutely miserable. And then very quickly kind of sort of, I don't want to say take over, but showed how dedicated to comics I really was. First thing was I want to grade comics. Once I started doing that, it's like I want to buy comic collections. And so I started doing that. It's like, okay, I guess hiring, firing, setting policies, doing this, doing that, creating events. Basically almost all the social media that the store has, I started.
Yeah.
Because at the time I started coming here, our webpage was like a robin's egg blue page with black text.
All I know is I didn't come to it very often.
It was pretty awful.
I think I looked at it when I first moved back, and that was about it.
I didn't create the webpage, but I definitely said we need to change this.
Yeah.
So, yeah. We've gone through a few different iterations of that.
And under all of that, so since you've been the manager, Guzu was first after Austin Books. Well, you were expanding Austin Books.
We expanded Austin Books a couple times while I was working here. First, we did the big open into the back, which was awesome. Then I think we opened Guzu, and then we did like the last open back even further into the back issue room and the storage space. Then Outlaw Moon. Well, I think we opened the Sidekick store before Outlaw Moon.
Well, yeah, you guys would have like the traveling Sidekick store for a while.
Well, first it was where Laboratory Computers was. Then in that weird space behind Half Price Books that had a very strange parking vibe.
Yes.
And then when a space opened up over here, we snapped that up as soon as we could. Yeah. But then we did Outlaw Moon, was the most recent store. And this one's kind of my baby right now because I don't know, I'm really enjoying games and a lot of stuff that's coming out, and I'm the employee that probably knows games the most besides the other guy who's here a lot. So
talk a little bit about what some of that stuff you're doing, because you've been doing videos of Dungeons and Dragons, and you play Red Dead and Spider-Man online, and
well, that's sort of my own thing. I like to live stream my video games. No one cares, but I have a blast with it. And I figure, I don't know, maybe if I ever did get famous, I would absolutely shut that page down immediately because there's probably just not good content on it. But it's fun for me now. And we used to film a D&D campaign here at Outlaw Moon with the Weirdlings. Then due to various pregnancies and babies makes that a little bit more complicated, so now we just kind of do it like at a home studio. But that's fun. We've got a couple different D&D campaigns, and I use what I learned from that to start doing videos for Austin Books. So that's why me and Ty do like the new comics kind of discussion every Tuesday evening, the night before they're available, and from there Jesse's taken on doing like Manga Monday, and then we do like Omni
Brennan's Omnibus.
That's a weird name. That throws me off. His name is Brennan. He talks about omnibuses. There's a B in both. There you go. You got a name. So they do like Throwback Thursdays and stuff, and now we're just trying to do like a lot of just Outlaw Moon has the games master, who is Tim, the other guy who's here a lot, and him and M talk about games that usually with like a theme, like food themed games or whatever. So like our social media has a lot of just talking about this stuff and telling you about it and things you might like and things to try out, which is nice because it sort of fills in, to kind of bring it a little bit full circle, the lack of Wizard magazine, or
right,
maybe you don't necessarily have like a best friend and a cousin named Brad to bounce these ideas off of, and you can get some of those ideas from us. And that's a big thing with brick and mortar too, is like we've got really pretty good opinions on this stuff, and we'll push a thing in your hand. It's because we love it too, so you're probably at least going to enjoy it.
Yeah, and one of the nice things about this store is it's very much not a Android's Dungeon kind of store. Like the staff isn't like wearing uniforms or anything, but if they can't answer the question about like if you're getting a little esoteric, they will find someone who will, and there's always someone around. And I'm not just talking about, because I'll just walk up to Ty or Brandon because I know which question to ask which guy. But I've also see lots of parents come in and ask questions, and seek help with, my kid just saw Into the Spider-Verse, where's your Spider-Gwen? that sort of stuff, and getting assistance.
Yeah, I mean, it helps having like a diverse crew that has different taste in comics, and being able to like, okay, I don't know the answer to that manga question. I can absolutely get you to 3 other people that can tell you that.
What is George's specialty? Because George has been here since...
George knows manga really well.
Okay.
George also knows the all ages section really well.
Okay.
I think that's mostly George's focus.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious now to figure out who's... I know who, because of the videos, who some of the specialists are. But...
some of them are pretty clearly obvious.
Yeah.
The sort of indie comics are like 2 former employees and me. Both Dale and Nolan know those really well.
Oh, right.
And I'll usually get, since they're not here, except for maybe as customers, or just, I'm pretty much just hanging out, I'll get recommendations from them, and then I'll check it out, and then I'll be able to push like the indie stuff. But we've got a very celebrated indie section because we care about that stuff a lot, and it's just different taste. And the indie section means something completely different from what it did 15 years ago. 15 years ago it meant like Fantagraphics and Oni and a couple other publishers. Now it is everything. Everyone has like indie books, first, second, and
right.
Just, and it's like kind of more like it appeals to. It's just a general bookstore kind of feel, really. Yeah,
and that's if you come in here and there are the different areas. There's the kind of the all ages or kids section, and then the manga section, and there's actually an art book in like European comics area that
It took us way too long to get those signs made, but I'm very pleased with how they turned out.
Yeah, and of course, if you're looking for kind of, I guess Dark Horse is tucked in with the rest of the superhero stuff.
So the only publishers really that are like set aside are Marvel and DC.
But that's for the floppies and the graphic novels.
Oh yeah, I mean they're all alphabetical by title in the sort of general graphic novel section.
Yeah.
But then there's the indie section, horror section, sci-fi section.
It's very much like a bookstore.
Yeah, we have a cowboy pulp section, which blows my mind to this day. It kind of goes in and out of popularity, but we'll always have that section at least.
Oh, they're publishing Lone Ranger again.
Yeah, they're trying to do Shadow. Let's give it a shot.
Yep. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap it up for our first episode. Thank you so much, sir.
If you all don't know what a Kryptonian thought beast is, by the way, look that up. He's a huge Superman fan because he knows what a Kryptonian thought beast is and decides to name his podcast after it. But it is absolutely a horrifying idea to be charged by a rhino-like monstrosity that is showing you how you're going to die on like its horn thing.
Yeah, it's got like a Triceratops plate on the top of its head.
It's like a little TV screen.
Yeah, it's basically a TV screen that's showing you. Yeah,
it's like, here's me killing you, eating you, and I'm like right in front of you. There's a Superboy cover and a Superman cover I'm specifically thinking of. I mean, they're almost the same cover.
Yeah.
But it's so great. This thing is just showing you what you're about to experience, and that's a horrific idea.
I only have the Superboy issue. I need to get all the rest of the Kryptonian thought beast.
And I love that that's an idea that came back. They're like, hey, we need something for issue 203. How about that Kryptonian thought beast, eh?
And the thing is, that is exactly, I'm sure, how it went down with Mort.
But yeah, they got like a list things like, well, do we want to put Hawkman in this? How about something snappy? Thought beast. Yeah.
It gave my little nephew the willies.
Yeah, I really like that in Superboy. Maybe Superman has a tougher time with him. I don't know. Give it a shot.
And we'll be doing a lot more Mort Weisinger impersonations as we envision how he was.
I have no idea what that guy sounded like. I just totally assume that old New Yorker.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you so much, and we'll do this again soon, both of you. We're going to be talking to some other folks as well. I ran into Ty and was like, oh, you live around the corner from me. We'll do this as well. So,
seems easy to put together.
Yeah, he's heading off to Spain, but we'll get him when he comes back. But anyway, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
See you soon, kids. about wraps it up for this edition of The Signal Watch, a production of the League of Melbotus. Thanks for sticking with us. If you enjoyed this podcast, we invite you to drop on by the Signal Watch blog, where you'll find write-ups of a wide variety of movies and more. You can drop comments on this podcast and let us know what you think. We do have a Signal Watch Patreon, and if you're so moved, we'd most certainly appreciate your support. We'll be back soon with more exceedingly high-quality content. So, until next time, God damn it, babies. You've got to be kind.